Fedde would be a worthy target for the Cardinals to go and pick up because obviously it improves your rotation, I think, for next year because he's under a very affordable contract, which is going to help his trade value. $7.5 million is all he'll need to be paid next year. He's 31 years old with a season and a half of control left. The White Sox are not going to be winning anytime soon. The time is now to trade Erick Fedde. And, of course, Bob Nightingale had reported within the last couple of days that the Cardinals have a, quote, strong interest in the 31-year-old right-handed pitcher. Now, I'm reading this blog off of the website. I think it's a Chicago-based blog, Sports Mockery, the name of the blog. And this post was written by Shy Sox fan Mike. So, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about the fan perspective of what White Sox fans might be hoping to get from a Fedde deal. And I actually think this is a very valuable exercise because we can look and say, all right, what are they hoping to get? And I won't say that Shy Sox fan Mike speaks for the entire White Sox fan base, but it's a nice, quick way to find a gauge from his blog post here. I'm going to read off some of the names and just tell you in a vacuum whether I would be willing to consider them in a Fedde deal. And obviously, me saying yes doesn't necessarily indicate, yeah, I'd trade all of these guys for Erick Fedde, but I'll talk about some of the names. Thomas Saggese on this list, 22-year-old infielder, has had a bit of a down season at AAA, but was a top 100 prospect before the season and has flashed a little bit of power as well. 11 home runs, 14 doubles on the season, and can play a little bit of everywhere in the infield. We like Saggese. We think he's a future big leaguer, maybe a role player, but I think one that has some value. I would trade him for Erick Fedde. I like Saggese quite a bit, even despite the numbers being down this year. I don't know how much value he has, but I would consider him. Cesar Prieto is another name on this list that I would also say would include in a Fedde deal. 25-year-old infielder, good numbers at AAA. But again, kind of like Saggese in that he'll play a few different positions. I don't know that he's a great fielder, I should say. Maybe primary, going to be second base if he ever gets to the next level, and is a little bit older as well, 3 years older than Saggese, 25 years old instead of 22. Also like the fact that Saggese is a right-handed bat, just in terms of a lot of what the Cardinals have. They could use more righties. Prieto is a lefty, for whatever that's worth. But yes, I would include him. How about Chase Davis, former first-round pick of the Cardinals, kind of struggling so far in his professional career. He's 22 years old. Took him out of the University of Arizona. I believe this was last summer. 21st overall. And it looks like came in Baseball Prospectus, had him as the number 101 prospect. I think they only have a top 101. But he was, according to Prospectus, the number 101 coming into the year, but has struggled with Palm Beach this season. Only a 734 OPS. I say struggled. That's okay. But when you're thinking about trying to project a guy forward, he's old for the level. It is not necessarily producing. 225 average, good on base numbers, seeing a little bit more pop from his bat, but I would say a disappointing year for sure for Chase Davis. Would I include him for Erick Fedde? I would. Even though he was just a first-round pick a year ago, 12 months ago, I think if the White Sox value him on that level, would I go Chase Davis and a lesser prospect pitching arm for Fedde? I would do that. Maybe that could surprise some people, but I think if you're the Cardinals and you've seen enough times things go wrong with your outfielders, granted, sometimes that's trading the wrong ones, but I just don't know if he's OPSing 734 at low A at Palm Beach, I'm not sure what it's going to take to get Chase Davis up to speed. I think he can end up with better numbers than that at the end of the season, but there are a lot of levels to climb for him. There have been some swing adjustments he's made. I'm not saying I'm not sold on him or that I don't believe in him. I'm saying that with everything encompassing here and knowing that Fedde would be a solid number 3 at worst in the way that we would pencil out next year's rotation for $7.5 million, I'm going to go ahead and trade Chase Davis, who I think is, even if he does turn it around, is still probably several years away from being a big league impact guy. And again, at low A, he's hitting 225. So it's just hard to project right now exactly what that's going to look like in the next couple of few years. So I like Chase Davis, but I think I would do it at this point. Would I feel differently if he was lighting it up and had been, graduated to high A or double A by now? Of course I would feel differently. So maybe it's a little bit reactionary for a guy that does not have a ton of professional plate appearances under his belt. Only 291 this year after 131 last year. But, I mean, that's starting to be some sample size for a guy that, has had played several college seasons as well. He was a 3-year college guy. So we'll see as far as he's concerned, but certainly I think it's okay to say that it's been a disappointing first full professional season for Davis. And I would trade him in a Fedde deal. Would I trade him for a rental? No. But somebody like Fedde, I think, is worthy of consideration. Would I add a huge pitcher to Chase Davis? No. My hope would be if I'm doing that deal, it's the White Sox are basically saying, we're a believer in the guy that you just drafted in the first round last year, and he can be the anchor to the package. We need some pitching back because everybody always does when trading quality starters. But if they view Chase Davis as that type of anchor, then I'm good with that. Is it realistic? Yeah, probably not, but you never know. They do have a little bit longer of a timeline to contention, so maybe a guy who is pretty young but could still be a couple of years away if he hits and makes good on that first-round talent and that draft capital could be interesting to the White Sox. I wouldn't poo-poo it. I think it could certainly be he could be a name that they'd be interested in. I don't really know what the Cardinals' temperature would be on moving on from Chase Davis as quickly, but I would say willing to do it if he's the anchor to a Fedde deal. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. I don't feel so strongly about it, but when I'm going down the list and naming names, obviously that's putting my takes out there, and so some of these are going to look silly down the line, I'm sure. Guys that I said I wouldn't trade, maybe they don't end up turning into anything. That's okay. I'm just kind of giving you the gauge for my temperature on some of these names right now. Jordan Walker is the next name on this list on the blog I'm reading here on the Sports Mockery website, Chicago-based blog. I would not trade Jordan Walker for Erick Fedde. That's one that I'll go down with the ship a little bit more on him relative to like how I feel about Chase Davis. Whereas like Walker dominated the lower levels of the minors and then has obviously hit a snag here, but the proof of concept of what we've seen him be. Oh, and what he was for basically a full year at the big league level last year. I'm not out on Jordan Walker where I'm going to go, yeah, trade him for Erick Fedde of all people who you could have signed for just money in the offseason before the year. Obviously, he's outperformed those expectations that people had of him then, but certainly I'm not moving Jordan Walker at this point for him. And if I'm wrong, I'll go down with the ship. That's okay. Listed in this blog as well, some interesting Cardinals pitching prospects. I'm just going to list some of the names. The way this blog post wrote it out said, based on their previous moves and current composition of the farm, it seems like the White Sox will target bats in exchange for Fedde, which would be great. I don't know that to be true or not. I just assume anytime somebody's trading a pitcher, they're going to expect pitching back. But if the White Sox feel good about where they are pitching-wise in their farm system, more power to them. I think the Cardinals would actually be a great mix, or a great fit, rather, for a trade. Like Chase Davis for Fedde. Would you do it? Let me know in the comments below. I think I would, because I think that it's valuable to have that guy locked up for a year and a half because he's been very, very solid. Am I selling low on Chase Davis if I do that deal? Very possibly. But that's no matter who you end up, like you can't kind of talk out of both sides of your mouth. If you want the Cardinals to make a deal, it doesn't happen for, Dylan Carlson and a guy that you don't want in the minor leagues, right? Like that's not the way deals work. There will be other teams, as this blog post mentions, I think it's right. Erick Fedde has exceeded all expectations, and it will soon be time to cash in. Bidding war should soon ensue. Yeah, there might be a bidding war for Erick Fedde, as crazy as it sounds. There are, you don't think the Braves would kill for Erick Fedde right now? They're starting dudes named Schellenbach, and, they've got half their rotation on the IL. Braves would love to have him. Dodgers would love to have him. So I think Fedde gets moved for sure, and I'm just not entirely sure that it's going to be a price that Cardinals fans are going to feel great about, but that doesn't mean it doesn't end up being a worthwhile deal if it happens. But let me name some of the pitching prospects that they named in this post and tell you my temperature on some of them before we get out of here. If Chicago's looking for pitching, St. Louis has that too. Left-handed pitchers Quinn Matthews and Cooper Jerpy. Right-handed pitchers Tekoa Roby, Gordon Graceffo, Sam Robertson, Michael McGreevy are just some of the arms that could be up for grabs within the Cardinals system. Now, to be clear, that's not me saying that. That's Shy Sox fan Mike saying that in this blog post for Sports Mockery, which seems to be a good outline in general. So I'm given the guy some credit. I haven't read his stuff before, but I think as far as the fan blog, it seems to be pretty well thought out. Here are the names that I'm gonna nix. I'm not trading Quinn Matthews. I don't think I'm gonna do Cooper Jerpy as well. I think there's enough upside there that I'm willing to see it play out. Gordon Graceffo, Sam Robertson, Michael McGreevy. I'd trade any of them in this deal. Graceffo could be the one that you regret. I think Graceffo could be 2025 on the right team. That's a rebuilding team, but they need a guy in their rotation to take 30 starts. I think Graceffo has the kind of moxie to grind out in sort of a Palante way, and it has maybe more pedigree than Palante did, because Palante wasn't really ever a touted prospect, but he just came up and grinded for everything he got, and next thing you know, he's throwing 98 sometimes, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. But that's kind of where I am on Graceffo, being a guy that you could throw him out there if you're the White Sox for 30 starts next year, and like 10 for the rest of this year if you trade for him. Because if you trade Fedde and Garrett Crochet, you're just going to need bodies to fill your rotation. If I'm the White Sox, Graceffo would be very interesting to me, because I can throw him out there without really any regard for if he's good or not yet, and see if he can learn on the fly. And it's great experience. Like, if I were a pitcher in that category where I was a prospect and I was minor league pitcher of the year, but a little bit of the shine is gone from me, and now I'm only up when I'm the 27th man for a doubleheader, and it's kind of like, where's my chance going to come to make a career out of this and be a big leaguer and make that big league salary and then make it again year after year? I'm looking for my shot. I'd love to be traded to the White Sox if I'm Gordon Graceffo. Hell, if I'm Michael McGreevy, maybe they want to throw me in their rotation. I think that would work for the Cardinals. I don't know if it works for the White Sox. I think they can get more in terms of regarded prospects for Fedde. But I also balked at Quinn Matthews and Cooper Jerpy. So I'm understanding where the dissonance kind of is there cognitively. If I'm the Cardinals, I'm trying to protect some of those guys that I really think could turn out. Graceffo is interesting because there is some of that shine from being a prospect. He's got a little big league experience that he's fared okay in. 30 starts next year, 4.5 ERA for the White Sox. That could be Gordon Graceffo. Wouldn't shock me. Sam Robertson, yeah, I don't really know, man. I would do it. I don't think there's similar to what we're saying with Graceffo. I just don't know if Sem has that type of cachet prospect wise. Was in the futures game last year, but he's got a 4.6 ERA in Memphis this season. A K per inning, good to see. I would do it from the Cardinals in this Fedde conversation. I don't know if the White Sox, if he moves the needle. Same with McGreevy. Tekoa Roby is an interesting one. I would also trade him. So of the 6 pitchers named here by this White Sox blog, Matthews, Jerpy, Roby, Graceffo, Robertson, McGreevy, I would say no question I'll do 4 of them, and it's all the righties. Roby, maybe I'm selling early on. I have just seen enough of his injuries to be like, if he's got that kind of value, even as he's pitching with a 6 ERA and injured in the minors this year, then more power to the White Sox if they can get the most out of him. But I wouldn't hesitate, because that's a bird in the hand versus a bird in the bush. I'm taking the one in the hand, which is Erick Fedde's 2.99 ERA this year. So I would put Roby out there. I would probably do Roby and McGreevy, or Roby and Robertson. Not with Chase Davis necessarily, but maybe that's what it takes. Jerpy and Matthews I want to hold on to, I think is how I feel. Let me know, though, with those names, Cardinals fans, and are there any other names? Like, I don't think we're talking Tink Hence, but if there's any other names that you think should be considered. Like, would Ian Bedell be interesting to the White Sox? I kind of like him as a Mizzou guy, but he's now got a 2.5 ERA with Memphis and is starting to look more and more viable as he gets stronger post Tommy John surgery a couple of years ago. Is Ian Bedell now on the radar for some teams? I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. You would think that there'd be other teams scouting the Cardinals minor league system, but we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening, if anything. Erick Fedde, what do you think, Cardinals fans? We talked a little bit about him yesterday, but I wanted to add this new layer and talk about actually some names. I'm not balking at all the names on this list. I think just a couple of the entire blog, I said wouldn't trade Walker, wouldn't trade Quinn Matthews, and I would be hesitant to trade Jerpy. Everybody else, I think you got to recognize it takes money to make money, and Erick Fedde has been money for the White Sox this year. So let me know your thoughts on that.